coming behind him.
Gross.
Get on point.
Just get on the
Fine.
point.
Triple homicide. Quadruple homicide.
Why? Why or...
Good point.
Hello, fellow Araxians. Well, guys, I'm sorry about all the Planetside Arena coverage lately. Hopefully you can understand why. It's in the universe, I have to make sure everyone's up to speed on it. But I think we've got enough information out there for people to make their own decision on Arena, so I want to step back to Planetside 2 and talk about a topic that is very near and dear to me, and that is lore. I know it's annoying that we can't escape it, but part of the reason this is on my mind is because lore dies in Planetside Arena. It's not that they don't understand its importance, they do. Straight from the dev letter on it, it says, "We've always thought of Planetside as an evolving saga that will eventually escalate beyond Araxis to interstellar war. And Planetside Arena is where it will start. Expanded factions, new weapons and vehicles, battles on distant alien planets, and the space in between them are all part of our vision." So it's not that they don't understand that people want it, it's just that they didn't do any of it. There are no factions in Planetside Arena currently, and there are no new vehicles. Now, I could see how they would allow you to choose a faction and your points that you earn during that Battle Royale match may go to one faction or the other. But they certainly have muted or nuked all faction flair, and they've done nothing to generate a reason to fight based on lore. So for now, Planetside 2 will have to be our last refuge for some lore in the world of Araxis. Now, the idea of traveling to a different planet and three factions battling it out across the galaxy has huge lore potential. I feel like it's extremely underdeveloped in Planetside 2. While some was started, I fill in the gaps with my own personal kind of lore and retcons in my own mind that we'll get to in a little bit that may help you generate more of a reason of why are we fighting? Why do we go back and forth over these exact same bases and the exact same continents? What is this conflict and why does it need to persist? And why does each faction feel that they should be the one that is victorious, that others should follow or join their faction in the war effort? Now, I'm going to give you the same very generic rundown on the lore that the wiki will give you, just so we all start from a basic place. If you want to expand your knowledge of the lore in the Planetside universe, you can check the description for links to further reading and viewing on the lore. So from the beginning, the lore for Planetside 2 picks up in the year 2426, acting upon intelligence that suggested imminent and simultaneous attacks, the Earth's 6 greatest nations declared war on one another. By all rights, the war's senseless violence should have been stopped by its effect on the human population, which would be cut in half within the first decade of fighting, or by its wanton consumption of Earth's limited resources, which were all but completely extinguished by the production of weapons of war. This to me is a frustratingly lazy start. They're trying to establish that there's scarcity on Earth, obviously, so the idea is everyone just fought a lot. And I guess, if you think about it, humans are in perpetual conflict, so maybe it's not a far stretch. And the story has all these weird, loose threads. So this worldwide war started over some really vague conditions, is wiping out everything we've got. And the lore goes on, rather than the big war ending just because people are running out of stuff to shoot each other with. On March 16th of 2444, a great rift in space appeared in the far reaches of the solar system. Though it only remained open for several weeks, reconnaissance probes were successfully dispatched to its location, where their scans discovered something unexpected: more scans. Scientists were shocked to discover multispectral transmissions emanating from the wormhole in the precise direction of Earth, as if something on its far side was scanning the planet. So we're obviously getting teed up for aliens of some sort. So that's all cool and surprising, and then this rift closes and it destroys Pluto. I mean, what the hell? Why not? You're writing the story. Let's just blow Pluto up. It adds some scale, right? So that's cool and all. And what it's also telling us is if the rift's only open for a few weeks and we can get a probe out to it, humanity has really figured out how to travel fast in space. In humanity's current era, it took New Horizons 9 years to make it to Pluto. So in 2444, we can make it to Pluto in a couple weeks. In the lore built for Planetside 2. Anyway, so this amazing discovery brings peace, ends the war, treaty is signed, and we get a new worldwide government with a worldwide president. And that is the Terran Republic. So anyways, 100 years go by like this, and the wormhole comes back in 2542. This time, though, there's no signals through the wormhole, so whatever was probing Earth is now gone. The wormhole disappears again, and it says by the end of that century, humanity has colonized the entire solar system, having space stations on every habitable moon or planet. So now we get to Thomas Connery. He represents the explorer, the adventurer. He leads expeditions to explore what's called the Moon Belt. It's basically a second asteroid belt that includes fragments of some moons and Pluto. He makes some cool discoveries, and for whatever reason, the Terran Republic's vice president suffered a heart attack, and Tom Connery was asked to fill the role by the president, and so he does. And then everyone loves him so much because he's a heroic explorer, he runs for president, and then he does 4 terms as the president of the Terran Republic. So he's top dog of the world. President of the world is Tom Connery. And then after that, after he's just done doing this little side gig as president of the world, he decides to go back to his passion of interstellar exploration, as the lore goes. So the Terran Republic's been cruising on for a while, but a lot of powerful CEOs are concerned about its control, its reach over business around the world. So they create something called Business Forward. And you can probably see where this group is going down the road. They're interested in Tom Connery's future exploration, and they want to have a hand in the pot. They want to have some of the ownership of anything that he discovers. So, and I'm quoting this direct here, in order to not only force Connery's hand into requiring their help for his mission, but also to create an entity capable of resisting the Terran Republic's mounting pressure on private businesses, Business Forward negotiated backroom deals with major banks, private security firms, and powerful labor unions across the solar system. This multi-industry consortium, dubbing themselves, you guessed it, the new conglomerate. So no conflict yet, but you can see the factions starting to arise. So Connery goes back to the Moon Belt because he had detected something in his exploration prior to his presidency, but he didn't find it, and now he was going back to really hunt it down, and he took a young, brilliant xenobiologist named Henry Briggs. As the lore goes, this guy's the father of the Vanu sovereignty. We'll find that later on. So anyways, they go back to the Moon Belt, and they found what was emanating the signals. It's an alien artifact. Boom. This is like, according to the lore, this is the moment, right? Imagine if we discovered life out there in the universe. This is the moment for the Planetside 2 lore, where humans realize they are not alone, and it sparks an space exploration boom. And Henry Briggs has a unique association with it, because he was the first person to touch the alien artifact, and it mentions that he suffered from an antisocial form of autism known as Asperger's. And when he touched the artifact, he was given a vision of his past, his future, and the effects of his actions on others. For the first time, he felt the sensation of empathy for those who had tried to care for and about him, and when we snap back to reality, he was left with only one single word ringing in his ears to explain his newfound awareness. Vanu. So anyways, they can't find any artifacts, so Tom Connery gets the idea, right? If you can't find them where we are, he's going to go through the wormhole, because that's probably where they came from. Anyways, so it's kind of like the new version of Columbus. He goes to the government, he says, hey, invest in this massive expedition, and he builds a fleet that's crewed by 75,000 people and preps for the wormhole to open. This is in 2636 at this point. So the wormhole opens, but disaster strikes. There's a gravity well. Half the fleet makes it through. The other half of the fleet's destroyed. 40,000 people make it through, but the wormhole collapses and they're stranded on the other side. So they're stranded on the other side of the wormhole, and there's unrest in the ranks. I'm picturing 10 years of episodes of Battlestar Galactica, where there's different factions developing on the ship, and different people want to do different things, and so there's like stress going on. This carries on for 10 years, and then the accident happens. Tom Connery's trying to work things out with people, get everyone to chill. The meeting took place, but what exactly was discussed, or whether a settlement had perhaps been made, was never found out, as Mission Commander Connery and other participants prepared to disembark the Discovery 7, a massive explosion tore through the ship and killed all 592 people aboard. That's right, Tom Connery, epic dude, does all these epic things, president, blah, 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 and then he ends in a flash of just a ship blows up. This is the point where the Terran Republic goes from like a benevolent kind of socialist utopia society to like dictatorship. They control everything. Everything's military lockdown now. So anyways, Brent Watterson is the lieutenant commander who becomes the provisional commander of the fleet, and they decide that they have to pick a planet to terraform. The scientists work, and by the end of that year, they have the world that they dub New Earth, that is going to be the planet the humans that are stranded on that side of the wormhole are going to terraform. And then right as we get to the juicy bits, it says, details on the period between the landing of the fleet and the current conflict are currently scarce. So it gets frustratingly vague again, like, okay, why do we hate each other? It feels like we're stranded on the other side of a wormhole. We should, hopefully humanity could pull it together so we can all survive. But no, I'm picturing Desperate Housewives, Battlestar Galactica. Just a big, messy ball of drama up in that starship. So, New Earth, the planet eventually rechristened Araxis, proved to be a hospitable new home for the wormhole refugees with varied climates and ecosystems not unlike those of Earth. It would prove, however, to not be without its secrets. Aliens' ruins were uncovered on the planet. And sometime in the year 2650, Henry Briggs discovered another identical to that which he and Tom Connery had found in the moon belt 16 years earlier. Sorry, it's a weird sentence, but that's a direct quote. Anyways, when he found it, he received another vision, this time hearing the voice of Anu speaking directly to him. Though what Briggs heard remains a mystery, it nonetheless caused a full-scale movement to form behind him and his research. So there you go, poof, you've got the Vanu sovereignty. Incredible technologies would come from the dedication of his followers. Briggs himself, however, would not be around to see their achievements. For unknown reasons, Henry Briggs took his own life in 2660. This is where the lore gets really frustrating. We've got the three, huge pieces that we need to know something about, and it just goes all super vague on us all of a sudden. The first major war starts because they acted upon intelligence that suggested imminent attacks. Well, you gotta paint the geopolitical landscape a little more. Was there a Cold War? Was global warming disrupting the international supply chain? It's not like everyone's like, hey, we're friends, then all of a sudden, hey, I think you're gonna shoot a missile, so let's just start World War III. You gotta take us a little deeper. Let's build the conflict, and you can even, that initial conflict could even sow the seeds for factions that'll start in the future. Maybe there's a private versus public, business leaders versus governments, I don't know. Give us a little bit more than imminent threats. Anyways, and the next big part is they make it through the wormhole. Tom Connery dies in the most anticlimactic way possible. And then it's, hey, we don't really know what happened from that point until they land on Araxis. Okay, man, again, but that's when the factions could really start coming into their own, okay? Maybe Richard Morganis tried to corner the market and control all the resources aboard the starship. Or maybe Henry Briggs went all fanatical and created a cult praising Papa Vanu. I don't know. Get stuff started here. Let's get a little bit more of this lore going, guys, not just we don't know what happened. And then finally in the end, you've got Tom Connery that just died all of a sudden. A ship blew up. It never even tells us it was a terrorist attack or some dude was smoking near the fuel tanks and the ship blew up. Who knows? We don't know. And then Henry Briggs, for unknown reasons, commits suicide. Come on, did he commune with Papa Vanu so much that he knew there was another reality and he was being transported there? I don't know. Give us just a little bit more. It feels very phoned in. They got the outline done, but they just didn't add any of the color. They didn't ink the drawing. And so all the lore ends with, eventually what began as protests evolved into riots, armed skirmishes, and finally all-out war. On June 21st, 2845, peace talks between the Terran Republic and New Conglomerate fell apart amidst conflicting reports of attacks in the Kaor Desert region of Araxis, and armed conflict broke out. The Vanu, having long watched the two factions bemusedly from the sidelines, suddenly found themselves in a dire position, wedged between two warring empires and on good terms with neither. With their options few and their allies fewer, they declared their independence of the Vanu sovereignty and took up arms against their longtime persecutors. Conflict has now consumed the surface of Araxis, where each faction's control of territory and resources is tantamount to the destruction of its enemies. With no clear advantage going to any one side, the future of the human race on Araxis has become as unclear as the planet's all-too-secretive past. So there you go, now we're fighting. So and then, to bring you up to speed on nanites and rebirthing technology, I want to give you the real quick version of Planetside 1 lore. The Terran Republic explores a deep space wormhole. Shortly after arriving, the colonists discovered the remains and technology of a lost and ancient alien species, the Vanu. otherwise known as the Ancients. This technology proved to be so complex and powerful as to barely be conceivable to human minds, involving levels of energy previously thought to be physically unquantifiable. This allowed for the quick colonization of 10 continents of Araxis, the creation of power sources and vehicles for the use of the colonists, and, most importantly, it facilitated the development of rebirthing technology. This nanotechnology allowed the Terrans to deconstruct and reconstruct their own bodies, allowing fast transportation across the world. Later on, it was discovered that dead workers could be brought back to life using the technology, revealing a startling new possibility: immortality. Needless to say, the incredible power and value of this technology was systematically acknowledged, and despite the scale of the advances made due to the study of the technology, it was also recognized that humanity had not yet even scratched the surface of any future possibilities. Later on, the discovery that the planet itself had been an artificial construction of the Ancients further served to solidify the realization that, if left unchecked, Vanu technology would forever and irrevocably change humanity and its future. And that's the logic for how nanites work, how you get your tanks, your vehicles, and the logic for how you constantly come back to life. So I can't find any footage of it. Wreckage got nerfed in the OMFG pass, but it used to be when you killed the tank, you would see the wreckage and then it would sort of dissolve in this green matrix pattern. It really gave the effect like the nanites that made it up were breaking apart. I thought that was a cool little piece. And I would like to see that same effect applied to corpses. You know, there's this, it's a little bit vague because they call it rebirthing, but I think rebirthing is a bad way to do the lore on an all-out battle like that. There's a great scene in Game of Thrones where Jon Snow risks getting trampled and just putting on display the piles of corpses and bodies. Imagine in a battle with Planetside where soldiers are endless, the amount of bodies that would pile up. It's not like we see any large scavengers rolling around the fields of Araxis. And think about the energy it must take to rebirth someone. The existing Planetside lore makes energy seem useless and not very precious, so maybe it's not a big deal there. But with that type of lore, it would be impossible to explain away where the bodies went. But when you bring nanites into the lore, everything makes sense, whether you apply it to a vehicle or one of the combatants. When a soldier or a vehicle suffers critical damage that the nanite structure can no longer hold together, they break apart, and on a microscopic scale, they all return to whatever tower is emitting the correct frequency, or the most powerful frequency, and I see some emerging gameplay modes surrounding that idea, to be reassembled the next time a soldier or a vehicle is printed at that facility. Nanites will be broken down into different classes, some of them being disposable, making up the plasma in your VS weapons, or the powder in your TR weapons. Others would be structural pieces, making up armor or drivetrains. And yet others could form themselves into complex circuitry, the type you'd need to form the complex computers that would manage a VTOL vehicle. So guys, what it boils down to is all the pieces of the puzzle are there. And even though it's barely scratched the surface, I think it already brings a lot of sense of meaning to the game for new players. Joining up with a faction, battling for their empire, even if they don't really understand the lore and it's not explained well in the game, there's still innate concepts that you can sort of visualize through each of them. But if that was developed more, if that was explained more, it would make the world feel all the more immersive. I mean, that's one of the really fun parts about sci-fi, is just making up, imagining how these things could work, rather than just saying, for unknown reasons. Okay, fellow Araxians, thank you for spending some time with me, immersing yourself in the world of Araxis and understanding the lore. As I explained before, I've sort of created some of my own retcons to fill in some of the gaps. Some of them that were pieces of the puzzle that never really finished, and others that just were never fully fleshed out or even started. But developing those ideas, bringing them all together, really helps round out the game in your own mind and giving you all the more reason for why you fight for your faction. Look forward to that video in the future. And while you're playing Planetside, make sure you appreciate that aspect of it as we move on to this bold new vision that is Planetside Arena, where we don't really know why we're there. That's going to be it for now, fellow Araxians. As always, thanks for all your support. And until next time, I will see you Planetside.